Okay, so welcome everybody. Today is November 3rd. It is our bug user group meeting. And tonight we have a special guest here, Wes Mohler. He's an alumni, he's a bulldog, and he was a graduate of our CM program. And it's been probably 3 years, right, Wes? Almost 3 years. So it's good to have Wes back. So I'll let him take the stage here in just a minute, but I did want to introduce some of the bug leaders here tonight, just so he can get a feel for our leadership team, and then we have some students as well that are coming in from some of our classes. Typically, Wes, we have a speaker series each semester. This one is called our Project Engineering Tips, Tricks of the Trade. The spring semester we'll come up with a new speaker series. In the spring of last year, we did the project life cycle. So it's a really great opportunity to bring our industry in. And so we're so happy that you were willing to come back and speak with us. And it's a great opportunity for the students to grow. So our leadership team here is Jaime. So Jaime, why don't you introduce yourself, because you're helping me out here tonight.
Yeah, my name is Jaime. I have around a year left to graduate. I'm a CM major, switched from civil engineering. Heard about the bug group around a semester ago. Just recently joined this semester, and yeah, I've been learning a lot. It's been really fun, and yeah, look forward to the presentation.
And Jaime, I'm going to put you on the spot here. Jaime just got a interesting scholarship from, what was the national organization?
I think it's NAC, National Academy of Construction.
Yeah, so he just won a prize here for that particular organization. So yeah, so it was a great opportunity. So Liza, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Hi, Wesley. Thank you for coming tonight. So my name is Liza. I'm a 5th year student here at Fresno State in construction management. And I've been involved with the bug group for about 2 years already. So far, I've learned so many great things from a lot of our presenters, and I'm glad you made it tonight.
Well, thank you. And thanks for turning on your camera. Appreciate that.
Yeah, some of these, I'll tell you, Wes, some of these students, they've been taking class all day because I know they've been in my classes. So this might be their only time to eat. So they may put theirs on a little bit later, you know?
No
Yeah. So let's see, we have Jose Gutierrez here, and Jose, I don't know, he might be able to turn on his mic's not working. So I'm gonna introduce Jose. Jose is actually working for Granite right now, right, Jose? You can shake your head. Yeah. So he's actually doing an internship with Granite. He's one of our bug leaders. So that's Jose. And let's see who else we have here. We've got Christina. Christina, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, Wes. Thank you for coming today. My name is Christina Vang, and I'm a 4th year at Fresno State. I've been with Bug for like about a year, I believe, right, Christy?
Yes.
Like a year. Yeah, learned pretty much a lot of stuff. It was pretty cool being in a bug group. I would say students, we have people graduating soon, so if you guys want, join the bug group.
Yeah, as a leader.
Yeah, as a leader, like it really does help. That's the only reason why I've like learned so much and like know how to use Bluebeam.
Yeah, so and Christina's been a huge help. So it really does, those of you that are coming regularly, consider, being on the team. We're going to be doing our winter recruitment. We recruit in the winter to be able to mentor students in the spring, so that the next academic year that you guys are ready to go to lead. So it's a great opportunity. And let's see, I'm looking here. It looks like we have Jared here. Jared's on our leadership team as well. Jared sometimes has internet issues too. How are you doing, Jared?
Good. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, I can.
I would turn on my camera, but it does this. and
Oh.
I don't know why, but hi, my name is Jared. I'm a senior in CM department. I joined Bug last year, and it's been great for learning the ins and outs of Bluebeam. And I'd like to help spread what I know about Bluebeam and learn as much as I can about Bluebeam from others, and that's why I joined. And I'd like to thank Wesley for speaking tonight.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jared. So yeah, so we have a variety of students here, Wes, so you might recognize some of the classes. So I'm teaching 116, which is our scheduling class. We've got people from 110, which is advanced estimating, which Professor Krask and I, they wrote me into teaching it. I'm like, okay, so I teach it as well. Sometimes CM20, we have people come from CM20 and CM170. So there's a variety of students here. And if you guys, are not eating or whatever, you can turn on your web cameras as well. Yeah, so we've got a variety of students here. We may have some people come in if they just are finishing class. So don't be, I'll take care of letting them in. Okay, so that's just a general little segue about us. So I think what I'm going to do is turn it over to you, Wes. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about how things are going at Tykert and what it's like being a project engineer there. So
Yeah, absolutely. So let me get my PowerPoint up and share my screen here. Okay, can you guys see my PowerPoint?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, excellent.
Yes.
Appreciate it. So this is just a brief kind of PowerPoint on RFIs and change orders, and also a little bit about Tykert, who I am, what I do as a PE for Tykert, and then how Bluebeam helps me accomplish some of those tasks that I've been assigned. So there we go. Okay, so just a little bit about me. My name's Wes. I graduated over 2 years ago. I've been with Tykert for 4 years, counting internships. So I'll be in April, it'll be my 5th year, I guess, with the company. And then, yeah, Fresno State CM, like Christy said, and something that I'm pretty proud of is I was on the heavy civil team for 3 years, and that's a really good competition. If you guys haven't heard of it or have the opportunity to try out for it, it benefits you quite a bit in the industry, especially if you're interested in heavy civil construction. It definitely benefits you on the estimating side and getting your foot in the door with some top quality companies. So just wanted to throw that in there. So here's some of the roles, as a project engineer for Tykert that I've been assigned. And Tykert's a little unique. Some companies keep you locked away in like one specific category, like, okay, you're going to do document control. So new plans and maybe submittals, right? And then you're going to do help with change order backup. And then you're going to do field management with daily reports. And then you're going to do, they break it up. So you're just stuck in safety or something like that for long periods of time. Well, at Tykert, you wear all the hats at once. And that means you're in the field and you're also in the office. So I'd say it's probably, depending on the job, it could be like a 50-50 split or, 60-40 depending. But on the field side, here's a few of the tasks that I have to perform. The most fun one for me is pre-planning construction operations with the superintendents and the foremen, right? Getting down in the trenches, if you will, with the real guys who do the work and make money, right? So we have to admire them a lot. But being able to connect with them and communicate and pre-plan, that takes you to the next level if you're trying to work your way up and be successful in construction. So the next thing would be coordinate schedules of work with subcontractors. I want to throw in with this bullet point that Tykert gives me a lot of responsibility as a PE, especially right out of college. Like there might be a specific scope of work that we can't do, and it's a subcontractor that has to come in and do the electrical or do, some structural work or something. And they'll give me that responsibility. Hey, you're taking care of the sub. You're going to babysit the sub and coordinate their work. And that's something that you have to do. And there's a lot of money on writing on the line. If you kind of if you overstep something or forget something, well then, I mean, that's kind of on you, right? But I enjoy that responsibility, and that's just something I have to do is coordinate with subs. Another one's order materials, working for Tykert. It's not like ordering door frames and 2x4s and aluminum framing and girders, right? It's ordering asphalt and rock and concrete, different type, dirt, trucks, everything, all of our subs. So it's a little bit different, but the premise is still the same. Your calculations have to be right, or your trucking has to be right, or you're going to screw up a lot of stuff. So that's another task I do in the field. Assist construction is needed, so field layout. The foremen are usually decent at reading plans. They're not amazing, but they're pretty decent. But it really comes down to myself and the PM team, and sometimes, and the foreman as well, to do field layout and plan those operations in support of the field, right? So I'm out there a lot, sometimes you have to be a parts runner and run and get, something you're needing for the operation that night or that day. And you try to minimize that, of course, right? But that's just something you do. So my point is, you're involved in the field a lot. You're not just sitting in an air conditioned office all day, which I actually enjoy. So splitting it up a little bit.
Hey, Wes,
Yes.
before you move on, I have a couple of questions. So for, and this is, I do a lot of consulting with different types of companies, whether it's heavy civil or, building construction. And so I have two questions. So how, what is the ratio of men to women at Tykert, that come in as field engineers? Have you noticed? And then the second question is what, and I do know that Tykert and Granite do a great job with their scheduling. What kind of scheduling programs do you use?
Okay, good question. So the first one about, women in our business, our company is owned by a woman, Mary Tykert, and she runs it. She's the president. She does a good job, but we do have a lot of project engineers coming in that are female, which is good. And the company is really pushing for that. The Fresno office needs more, and we're actively recruiting that, and we're looking for talented people, regardless of anything. And, but yeah, we're definitely looking for more women in the Fresno office. Stockton has quite a few, Sacramento. And yeah, no, it's definitely an important part, and part of our recruiting actually this last year at the career fair, and also at Heavy Civil for the Reno team. I know my boss, Alex, he's the area manager. He's looking for several women to step in to the role of a project engineer, or potentially an intern leading into a project engineer, or both. So that's definitely a focus of the Fresno office right now. Just get more women. We had Monet and Shelby come through. I don't know if you had the opportunity to extend Christy, but they're two excellent women one of them's working for us now up in Woodland. And then the other one is working for DeSilva Gates. Monet rather is working for DeSilva Gates. So, but we tried to get them in Fresno, but they wanted to move elsewhere. So I get it. But,
well, and it's funny, Wes, I asked that question because, building construction has a more diversity, I would say, than heavy civil. In Granite and Tykert especially, and DeSilva have been really good about integrating, more diversity into their companies. And with Tykert being owned by a woman too, but it wasn't that way not too long ago, because I actually started out working in heavy civil, and I never got to go out in the field, so it's to hear this is really, really good, Wes. And I knew that was happening. So
Yeah.
It's really good to see. And I'm glad that you guys are encouraging that. And so maybe answer the scheduling question, because I know Tykert's very good at scheduling.
Yeah, so we use Primavera 6, P6 for our whole organization. Even our sister companies like Tykert Energy Utilities does Tri Utilities. They're smaller, right? But they use P6 as well. Yeah, we have internal servers that run that program, and then we have a database which is localized several databases actually that are localized that one is for our resource side. So all of our superintendents for asphalt, we have superintendent for grading and for paving, right? They all have to manage their own schedules with their crews, giving different jobs to crews. And then the PMs have to manage a separate schedule for just the job at the job level. So the PMs and PEs use that program as well. But yeah, and then we go through resource meetings where we pull up P6 and we select all the projects in a certain region. And we talk amongst all the PMs and PEs and superintendents about resource needs and how that team can best fulfill those.
Well, good. And I do know that Tykert has spent a lot of time. They have it pretty well buttoned up with project controls, both estimating and scheduling. And a lot of the jobs that Tykert does are based on Caltrans specs, and usually they require Oracle P6. They don't require Microsoft Project. So
and learning on Microsoft Project, I actually enjoy the program. It's simpler, it integrates better with the computer, and it's more user friendly. But once I've learned P6 and gotten used to it, it actually has a little more powerful. Can do more, and it can integrate with your other projects a little better and with resources, and it suits our needs better, and that's why they have it. But we do on a very select few jobs use Microsoft scheduling if it's required at a job level on the spec or something. But, yeah.
well, thanks.
Yeah, of course. So that was kind of the field side, and I want to further elaborate that as a project engineer, you're doing both. So you're not a field engineer and an office engineer. You wear both hats, and you have to. So field management is kind of what we just covered. And then now I'm going to go over kind of the office management. I threw on a little time lapse here. This is at Table Mountain Casino, assembling a bridge. It looks like it didn't load in all the way, but that's okay. That's a conspan bridge precast that we bring in on a bunch of flatbeds and hoist them into place. And then you backfill dirt on top of it and make a bridge. So next time you guys are out there, once it opens up, you guys can check it out. We put that together. It's pretty cool. But going into office management, so a wise person once told me at Tykert that you can survive if you know the office side really well, right? And you can do your job and do the time cards and processing submittals and invoices and all the logs that you have to keep track of and emails. Like if you can do that, you can survive if you don't know anything about field. But if you only do field as a project engineer and you don't know how to use a computer or some of these programs that you're learning in school right now, then you won't survive. Or you definitely won't excel. You won't succeed in being a successful project engineer. So that being said, you need a balance, but the other side, the important side of that is the office management. That's kind of the tangible work that you get to do as a project engineer. So some of that for me includes time card review and approval. The foremen send in time cards every day of their work. They have different cost codes where we track costs for different activities like pave asphalt, place concrete, grade, maybe a median in a road or something. So all those have different cost codes and the cost has to be tracked separately. So you're reviewing those, approving them, or making corrections as needed. The big one here that we're going to talk about today, but one of those is RFIs and change order management. So yeah, you're responsible. Sometimes you come up with RFIs if you have a question and the PM gives you the go ahead and says, hey, go ahead, send in the RFI, draft it up, then you're the one turning that in, which is pretty fun. And then you're also helping with the change order management. Even though it's overseen by the PMs, it's up to the PEs to track any backup and cost that might be associated with change orders. So we're going to get into that a little later. Another one here would be invoice review and approval. In Tykert, I think as a PE, your limit's up to like $80,000 for just you to approve it. And then anything above that, you need your PM to approve it as well. And then it keeps going up as the invoice gets higher. So heavy civil work, you can have some pretty big invoices, and as I'm sure commercial can as well. But yeah, so that's another thing I have to do for each truck. Each day of trucking on the job, bringing in material, you have an invoice. You got to make sure the hours match. It's a whole process, but yeah, everything you do comes at a price, and you're kind of the backflow preventer, if you will. I'm trying to think of the right word, but you're the gate that keeps that holds the money to an extent, right? Up to $80,000. So that's a lot of responsibility. Your job could easily lose money if I were to screw up, or you as a new PE were to screw up. So yeah, that's an important part. Submittals and logs, you guys know all about that. Turning in submittals for materials you want to use, and there's a bunch of tracking you do depending on the job you're at. This is an example of a submittal log down here on the bottom left. So this is just a little snip of one that we use in Excel, but we have other ways of tracking submittals as well. So document control, plan set control, revised plans, current sets, letters from the agencies. You're in charge of managing that documentation. And then quantity takeoffs, that's pretty typical. And there's a lot more too that you have to do. These are just some of the big highlights that I could think of off the top of my head. So any questions regarding kind of the office side, the office management, before we jump into RFIs and change orders? Okay. If there's any questions, please don't hesitate to speak up. I'm happy to answer. So let's jump in to our topic tonight. So topic tonight's RFIs and change order management. I want to start it off by kind of asking what RFIs are. So when I was actually a junior, even as a junior and going through CM20, I didn't really necessarily know the difference between RFIs and transmittals and submittals. And it just seemed like a bunch of things that rhymed and kind of had acronyms. So I didn't really understand that until I got working in the field. And but basically RFIs are requests for information. You guys probably know that. But the simpler version is just a question to the owner, engineer, or architect, or all three. So when you want something answered and maybe the plans aren't clear, or maybe they're conflicting, right? That's a common one I've seen on my current job, where one sheet says one thing, one says the other, and there's a conflict. You have to ask an RFI so that the engineer can respond and give you direction on that. So here's an example of one that we had on our, so I'm working on Merced right now on a Highway 99 freeway project. Apologies for anyone who has to drive through there at night because we're doing a lot of work. But anyway, so this is an example. We had to pave this new asphalt on the shoulder here. Per plan, this is the configuration that it was done in. Now, I don't know if you guys can see this picture super clearly, but there's a 7/10 of a drop off here. In civil construction, we use decimal feet as like kind of our unit of measure. We don't use like 7 3/4 of a foot, 7 3/4 of a foot, or we don't use like inches too often, but we use decimal feet or tenths or hundredths of feet. So anyways, this is a 7/10 drop off here off the shoulder of a major freeway, Highway 99, onto the embankment here, which is I guess the soft portion of the shoulder, but there's no fill dirt in here. So this is a big safety hazard. If you were to be driving at 60 miles per hour and you had to pull off onto the shoulder, right? That's almost, 8 inches that's basically 8 inches of drop off. That would really screw up your car, especially if you were you were riding low, you weren't in a pickup or something. So needless to say, this is not Caltrans spec. It's a safety hazard. So we had to turn in this RFI before we could put traffic on this portion of the freeway. First you have to generate the backup though. So you take a picture out in the field. I use Bluebeam to kind of mark this up and give a visual demonstration of, what that thickness really was. And then on the plan set, we use just basic tools like line work and measuring and, screenshots, and kind of put together the 3 different areas that were affected by this and what the cross sections, the other plan sheet showed, and how there wasn't supposed to be dirt here. This was supposed to already be filled up, but it wasn't. So then we had to ask that question to the engineer, and you can see that down here at the bottom right, where you have to reference the pictures and reference the plan sheets. So Bluebeam helps us with that, but it's just us asking the question to Caltrans, hey, what do you want to do here? And that's pretty much all there is to it for RFIs. Now there's strategy on the questions you do ask and you don't ask, right? If you want to, maybe you need to buy some time for your project and you could wait an extra day to turn it in, well, then maybe you wait an extra day. Sometimes that happens, right? Realistically. But that fundamentally, it's just a question that you're posing. And that's how it differs from like a submittal or a transmittal. RFI is just a question. So it never hurts to ask a question usually. And anyways, that's the fundamentals of an RFI, because I know we're dealing, I think, with everyone from freshmen up to seniors, right, Christy? So I don't want to assume anyone knows anything.
Yeah. How many RFIs do you typically have on your jobs?
That's a good question. It could be anywhere from 5 to like 100. So it depends on the size and the scope. On our current job, we haven't even gotten into the second phase yet, and we're already at 50, which is pretty bad for a Caltrans job on their part.
Yeah.
Plans are that inconsistent. So yeah, anyways, I think we're at like $2 million in change orders just from RFIs.
Wow. And I asked that question, Wes, because our last speaker, he was Turner, he was building construction, he was doing these massive, landmark projects. And he said on the one job that he had it was called SoFi. I think that was the Rams Stadium, if I'm not mistaken. He had like 2,000 to 3,000 RFIs, so there is a difference between building construction and heavy civil in the amount of paperwork. It's a lot less, I would say, in general, with heavy civil.
I believe it. And usually the dollar amounts differ too. So, a pretty standard city, maybe a high rise commercial building or something. I mean, you're talking, in the, dozens of millions, hundreds of millions, easy with no problem, right? You can even be up to almost $1 billion, right? Depending on how high you want to go. But it's with civil construction, more often than not, they're local projects, that don't typically go over, we can just say 100 million. Like that's probably a good cap for local project. Most of them are way smaller than that. I mean, they're probably smaller than 40. But that's a good point. So there's a lot more complexities with building construction as far as like, doors and frames and structure and foundation. Freeway work, it covers a lot more area, but it's more decentralized. Like it's not, you don't have the higher dollar amounts, you don't have all the things trying to interconnect together, but you're doing more projects, right? So my project management team isn't just going to work on this job. We're going to work on, maybe another job or two, depending on how much work we got. So that's a good point. But yeah, right now on our current job, we've turned in quite a few RFIs because the plans have just been so inconsistent. So, and you have to do that. You got to hold them accountable.
Well, and I think, Wes, the amount of paperwork, that in comparison, a project engineer in building construction is probably going to be doing a lot more paperwork than somebody in heavy civil. And so that's why you're able to do a variety of different things, and be out in the field too. So it's something to consider, but you don't see oftentimes visually, you don't see vertical construction, you see where, heavy civil, you see it, but it's usually covered up,
Yes, exactly. Exactly. It could be underground utilities that you never see right after.
Right.
Or even, freeway, like all the stuff underneath this section of freeway, there's rocks and different kinds of, so yeah, that's a good, excellent point. But it is a nice benefit to my job and, getting out there in the field more so, and not just taking an elevator ride up, to door and looking at like door handles, right? It's we're working with big toys, big yellow iron, and moving a lot of dirt, a lot of materials. It's very challenging because you got to work with different owners sometimes and within certain parameters. So yeah, that's an excellent point, Christy. Thank you. So I'm going to keep going here. So RFIs, when you get a response back from the engineer saying, hey, we need you to do this, sometimes, more often than not, that generates a change in the plan, the original plan of what your company had in mind when they bid the job, right? So take this piece of asphalt, for example. We didn't plan on filling dirt up alongside it, right? That's an extra cost. That costs people, foreman, a crew to go out there and place that dirt to protect this safety hazard. So that extra cost, it's not fair that would be put on the contractor, right? For something that was a plan issue. So in this case, due to the response of this RFI to having us go back and put dirt here, that would cost money. So we have to get a change order for that. So next we're going to cover change orders. And all it is a change to the existing contract that you signed with your owner in advance, which had fixed pricing typically for, or unit of pay pricing for your scope of work based on the plans and specs at the time you did it. So when you do a change order, you're changing either the dollar amount, like they're adding money or taking away money from your contract. And then the second piece of that is a time adjustment. So a lot of contracts, almost all contracts in construction have a time limit. So you have working days and you have agreed upon floats. And I mean, I'm sure you guys have covered this in scheduling, but the liquidated damages if you don't finish on time. So we have all that in Caltrans too. So whenever they add a scope of work like this to us, adding dirt next to asphalt, they have to not only pay us the money to go do the work, but they have to add the working days required that's negotiated with them to complete the task. So it is pretty flexible. You can do a lot with change orders. The specials or specs will sometimes, they'll set a format for how for rates, right, for pieces of equipment or for labor hours for different trades, right? But in general, you can, if you come to some sort of an agreement with your owner, like, hey, we'll pay for this, you pay for this, or maybe it's just flat out like, hey, you need to pay us for this work you haven't done. They're pretty flexible. So a lot of, I mean, it is legal, right? It has to be California contract code. It has to meet different requirements, but in general, if you come to some sort of agreement with your owner, you can put it in a change order and then it's official. So then it's part of the contract and they have to pay you or to fulfill those terms. And so, and I use the contractor have to fulfill those terms as well. So all it is it's a change to the original contract and you're adding dollars or taking away dollars or adding time or taking away time. So those are the two main key components. There's a few other nuances depending on who your owner is that make change orders different. They can either be time and material change orders where they pay you based on how many hours, like you don't want to put a bid on something you don't know how long it's going to take to do. So that dirt, if that dirt was very complicated and it had a bunch of pipes and stuff that, we didn't really know, we weren't able to quantify, then, or it's removal work or something, then you would want to do that at T&M force account. So that takes the risk off you as a contractor, but it allows the state to direct your work and how you're going to do it because they're paying for each hour as opposed to like a lump sum price for that scope, that whole scope of work. So, yeah, I mean, there's a few other nuances there that you guys will learn in your classes and also when you get out into the industry. But fundamentally, that's what change orders are. It's just a change with an increase or decrease to time and the contract dollar amounts. So, do we have any questions here on change orders?
Yeah, Wes, some of the students may, because they're younger, students coming through the program may not know what T&M and force accounts are. So maybe you could describe that.
Sure. So I'll kind of start with T&M. I mean, that's kind of the basic one. So it goes hand in hand with Caltrans force account, but T&M just stands for time and materials. So they will pay you as a contractor to complete a certain scope of work, like say it's remove a bunch of trees that you weren't originally intending to. Well, then maybe you don't know how long it's going to take to do those trees, and it's just something, hey, we got to do it, tomorrow or next week or something, and it's not a whole lot of work. Well, then you could petition the agency or your owner or your prime contractor, hey, I want to run this on T&M. So I want to get paid for the time and materials it takes to do this. Not just like give them a price, hey, it's going to cost us 30 grand to remove these trees. It's going to be whatever it is going to be. So you get paid a certain amount per hour for each person. So a foreman might get paid, $80 an hour or $130 an hour. Equipment has its own rates per, hour. So that's another portion of the time aspect of T&M is you got to get equipment and labor and operators to, you got to track their time and then they'll pay you for that time. And then furthermore, the material side, you got to track your material. So if you order asphalt or dirt from Vulcan Materials or something, well, then they have to pay you per ton, right, for all that material. And it'll be an invoice, right? You submit your backup with change orders. So if it's a T&M, change order, well, then you're going to send in all the hours you worked that were agreed upon with the owner and also all the materials you purchased for it. So you'll package that all together and submit it with the change order and get paid for it. That's T&M. Maybe a more traditional change order, which is ideal for most parties, is to do a lump sum or unit price change order that's agreed upon before you do the work. So that's a different kind that's separate from T&M. But let's say it's not something super critical that has to happen right now, and you have time to price it up. Like maybe they want to pave an extra driveway or something with concrete. Well, then you can price up that work and then send it in as like a change order request, is what we call them, the COR. Or change, yeah, and then they get to decide, well, hey, look through your pricing, look through your breakdown of what it costs, and that would, and then if they agree to it, it's a lump sum or a unit price change order. So it's not, they're not paid, the risk is yours, and you own the risk of how fast you can do the work. So they're not going to pay you more money if you lost money on paving an extra driveway, right? Because you already turned in the price and everything. So, but as opposed to T&M, if it was done on T&M, well, then they pay you for whatever hours you work. So there's no risk to the contractor.
So Wes, what is the percentage of work that you're doing that's public work versus private work at Tiger? Just, a general percentage.
Yeah, so I would say 2 years ago, it was probably 60-40. So like 60% private work, maybe 65% private work. And then the other 40 would have been public work. The Fresno office does a lot of public work. We're a more public works-based office, doing work for Caltrans and the counties of, Fresno, Tulare, Madera. We do work up here in Merced, right? So we're more public works-based, but we do have a few private jobs, and I'm going to go over some of those later. But that's probably the percentage down here, or at least as Tiger as a whole. But probably the Fresno office, number of jobs wise, we're probably 70-30. Probably 70% public work, 30% private. So
on your change orders, and this is something that, you guys as students aren't going to know this, but, on a lot of heavy civil work is done, obvious low bid, it's a hard bid job. And so your change orders are an opportunity for you to make a little bit more money on the job sometimes, and so, I think, Wes, maybe you could, and maybe you don't know the answer to this, but, there's a fine line when there's some contractors that are known for change ordering their job to death, to make money. And there's some that kind of navigate that fine line, and so I would imagine Teichert is more of navigating the fine line because they have such good relationships with the companies out in the industry. But maybe you could expand on that, a little bit without giving away trade secrets, because we do have Jose here who's working for Granite. So
there's no secret to it. They do.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's like you said, it's a balance between what you want and what the agency wants, just like any other negotiation. Now, someone like Caltrans, we do a lot of work for Caltrans. So you don't want to change order and get someone on your bad side. Like maybe you can squeak out an extra, maybe 40 grand or, out of like a change order or something on this one job, but you're going to piss off a lot of people. Working for Caltrans or the other agency, and you don't want to necessarily just roll over them to get, that extra 20, 30 grand. I mean, it depends. Your managers will make those decisions for you. But it's important to maintain that balance. There's companies, I don't know if anyone here works for them, I hope not, but Security Paving, they're kind of pushed up from SoCal. Now they're here in Central Valley and working up towards Sacramento, but they're notorious for change ordering their jobs to death. Even with Caltrans, at the end of a job, bring in a thick binder stack of claims, right, and say, boom, here you go, Caltrans, paving my claim. And then it's this big fight, and then they have minimal retention. So that's how you make enemies in the industry, and that's something you don't want to do. So I know Teichert is very. We want our goal, especially with this area manager, is to be fair, right? And I think all of our areas are the same. But if it's if it's not on the plans and it's something that's going to be kind of a big hassle for us, over a certain dollar amount, and, we need to get compensated for it, well, then we'll make our case and attempt to get compensated for it. And that's the reputation that we like to maintain in the industry amongst, not only public work, but also private work with all the developers and, down over there in Tracy, the warehouse guys. We want to maintain those relationships and be fair with them. So it's not, let's say you have to do, well, hey, we need to have an extra guy here for this one operation, well, to go pick up, I'm just trying to think of something menial, maybe trim trees or backfill a tiny little trench with a little drain pipe. Like you don't want to go after your owner for the small things, because that'll frustrate them too. But I interrupted you, Christy. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, no, that's okay. I was just thinking, Granite, I'm trying to loop Jose into this too. Granite is going to be the same way. They're going to be fair. They have a reputation out in this particular industry. It's like the Tudor Salibas that, I don't know if you've heard of Tudor Saliba. Years ago, Tudor Perini is on the high-speed rail. Tudor is the Saliba side. So Tudor Saliba is one of those companies that is known to change order their job to death, so, so, it's the values of the company, what do they care about, and I would say Granite and Tykert really care about their clients a lot more, I noticed that even being, overseeing jobs that are like this, that they're like in a totally different, and DeSilva Gates as well, probably Flatiron as well,
Yeah.
So.
And there, I think Tykert values the long-term gains a lot more than the short-term, with just at the job level. Hey, I'm going to make this much more money. It doesn't really matter to Tykert. Like, yeah, you have to be profitable as a business, but for maintaining your relationships, that's the most important part of what we do, especially, public and private work. It really doesn't matter. You got to maintain those relationships, and companies like Tudor, Tudor Perini that you were talking about doing the high-speed rail, or Flatiron Dragados, they're another one. And, security, like they want to do a lot of change orders, and they want to be low bidder on some things, but they're trying to steal competition and jobs away from those that do it the right way. And it ultimately, long-term, it doesn't work out for them. Security's losing their butt on a lot of jobs, and Caltrans, okay, hey, you want to play that game? Well, then they can hold you accountable on all your work with no, like, even if it's just maybe your concrete's an eighth of an inch off on like some minor on all of your, foundations for all your street lights. Well, then they're going to go out there and make you change it. Or even though it's not a big deal, honestly, they're going to go out there and make you change it, because you've rolled over them on all these change orders, and you've kind of steamrolled past them. So they're not going to like you, and they're going to hold you accountable. So it's
the paybacks, huh, Wesley?
Yeah, it pays off to be flexible and maintain that relationship. So that's a good question, Christy. Thanks.
Yeah. And I say this because I do a lot of Caltrans work. I oversee a lot of Caltrans work in companies like Tykert and Granite, and change orders, we don't learn a lot of that in school, and it's a big deal out in the industry. And I don't know if you remember this from CM20, Wesley, or even CM170, I would sometimes talk about this, but an RFI rolls over into a potential change order, and a change order, if it's not resolved, ends up being a dispute, and then a dispute can be a claim. So that one little RFI is such a big deal, and if you don't resolve these change orders in a positive manner, it can snowball into a really bad situation, so.
Sure.
It's and these jobs are kind of notoriously like that, for especially these contractors that are like change order happy.
Yep. Totally true. Totally true. And part of maintaining that relationship is being honest with your owner, and being upfront, right? Because the more you are upfront and honest with them, you already got the job, right? You already have the contract. The more you're upfront and honest with them about your situation, the better you can manage it as a team. And that's the whole partnering side. And I don't really know if we're going to partnering too much at Fresno State, but Caltrans is big on that now, on partnering. And at first I thought it was kind of a bunch of just kind of gibberish, and I thought it was just kind of pie in the sky, like kumbaya stuff. But on this project, it's actually been very successful, and it's definitely helps maintain the relationship. So, well, we thought we could do a whole nother one of these on partnering.
I'm partying.
Yeah.
That's true, because that's my master's line of work. So yeah, it's basically a dispute resolution tool that's more team oriented, you know.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
for those of you that haven't heard it, I was going to make one comment, Wes. I think it depends on the type of job it is in terms of how some of these companies will change order it to death. So like, for example, a Caltrans job, their spec is so, like, I want to say rigid in a way, or structured. It's like the same spec, that they use on all jobs. But you go to like the high-speed rail, yeah, that's a standard spec. So it's like a standard spec. So when you go into this line of work, you really know that spec. But, you look at, I know that, the high-speed rail uses some of the standard spec for Caltrans, but you look at that job and it's like an open pocketbook. So, they build that job and then they think, oh my gosh, well, they're basically paying out all this money. So we'll just keep change ordering it. And that's why these companies are staying on that job, is because they're getting paid a lot of money to be on that job. So that's just a little tidbit that it depends on the client.
Absolutely. It totally does. It totally does. Yeah, we could do a whole nother one of these on the high-speed rail.
I know.
Get into that. That's a crazy deal. So anyways, so as far as change orders go, I mean, that's fundamentally, that's what a change order is. There's a lot of nuances to it, and it's completely circumstantial depending on what project you're on. Even if you're on one Caltrans job, if you're doing public work for Tykert, you're going to have change orders for Caltrans. You're going to have change orders for the county, change orders for private owners. It's all going to be different. So, at the end of the day, these are the fundamentals. It's an increase or decrease in time and or money. So, that's at the most fundamental level. But the important thing to realize here too is they can often be generated by an RFI. So the two will go hand in hand. So that's why I'm sure they were put together on this seminar today. But if there's an RFI and the plans aren't clear, well, then more often than not, they have to provide some sort of compensation with time and money to allow you to do your work as a contractor. So, yeah. And then I'm going to jump into kind of what we use Bluebeam for. Unless there's any other questions about change orders and RFIs, I'd like to answer those if possible. No problem. So this is a Bluebeam group, so it wouldn't be fair if we didn't talk about Bluebeam. But we use at Tykert, we use Bluebeam for pretty much a lot of the same stuff that other companies do. Quantity takeoffs is a very helpful one. Plan set management, you got to have a current set of plans all the time, and sometimes they don't always give you like, okay, here's a full new set of plans, sheets 1 through 1,000, right, or 1 through 100. They're only going to give you, certain sheets revised if your RFI requires that, or if they have a new plan, they're only going to give you certain sheets. You got to maintain a current plan set so you can know where to go to all the time where your plans will be current. Now you can use Plan Grid for this. You can use other programs or just plain old Bluebeam. But either way, we always Tykert policy is to always have a current plan set that's managed by Bluebeam. So you're copying and pasting sheets in and crossing off ones that are old. It's very simple, but it is something that we do. Production maps and plans, that's a big one for Tykert. On jobs like this, production is everything. So when you're doing long scraper hauls, moving dirt, or you're paving asphalt, you're covering a large area. You're not stuck in one, acre site. You're looking way, way bigger, right? The whole freeway through Merced's 5 miles long both ways. So it's, these maps are very important to foremen as tools to plan their production on, okay, if we can get 800 tons of asphalt tonight, how far does that take us to what station mark, or what location does that take us to, with that 800 tons, where do we have to get to meet our goal and make money on each day's or each shift's work? So those production maps and plans are really important. I know they have similar things, on the commercial side, but that's big for us. RFI and change order backup. So you guys saw earlier on one of my slides, you have to maybe highlight certain plan sets or copy and paste and put together a collage, right, of a bunch of different standards and plans to accurately put together an RFI or draft a change order. So something Christy just mentioned is it's important to get your change orders done as soon as possible, and not delay those for months or years if you're really bad. But it does happen, unfortunately. But the sooner you get those done, the better, because everyone gets selective amnesia, right? So if you go and do a bunch of work, move a bunch of dirt that wasn't on the plan, and you don't have a change order for that, but you already did the work, well, then if you don't get that change order done as soon as possible, well, then your owner's going to look at you 2 years later and say, hey, I don't remember this dirt being moved. Show me your proof. And then it's 100% on you, and they don't even have to pay you technically. So go ahead, Christy. I saw you on mute.
Yeah, so Wes, and this is going to tie it. Our next speaker is going to come from Queering, and he's going to talk about drones and videos and, web cameras and how they're used out on site. So, when you're using Bluebeam, I mean, how often, this is the problem with heavy civil construction, it gets covered up. So when you're doing a change order with backup, are you loading, your videos and your pictures and stuff in Bluebeam, to kind of put that package together?
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to show an example, but it's an active job, so I can't really, I can't really show it, but yeah, you got to put together backup on Bluebeam. The way you can use different size plan sheets, you can copy and paste, you can highlight, you can measure, you can draw shapes, you can do anything on this program, as you guys are probably well aware, being in the Bluebeam club. So yeah, it's we use Bluebeam all the time for backup for those change orders, highlighting plans. So here's an example of me just making doing kind of a quantity takeoff for remaining asphalt we have to pave. And this is a picture that shows it on Google Earth with our KMZ loaded into Google Earth. So this is just stuff that you can print out and give to foremen or give to PMs or other people that really helps them understand where, if you weren't able to do this and you just had to print out everything separate, well, then you're looking for everything, right? So these maps and these, this backup is like a really crucial part of our business.
How often are you using Studio? Do you know how to use that, Wes?
Some of my coworkers have started using Studio. We have a share drive for all of our different jobs, have a separate share drive. So we haven't found the need to, the absolute need to use Studio, since all of us are interconnected on the server. We can just dump them in there, and that's where we save everything else, like Excel and goes right and everything, PDFs. But Studio is pretty cool. We haven't had a huge use for it at Tykert right now, but I do like having a cloud, right, where you can just go and everything and pull everything up pretty quickly. But yeah, we at Tykert, we don't use Studio too often, although if you really wanted to, you can totally use it. We don't stop you from doing that.
Yeah, and those of you that came to the last speaker, Turner uses it on their larger jobs, and it's expensive to have, but they do use it on their larger jobs. And so like for RFIs and submittals, they can submit through Studio and have the reviews done, and it's done a lot faster, so because you're using Bluebeam, that may be the wave of the future that you guys end up using it. But some companies use different tools, and and I think some industries use different tools too. So
absolutely. So there's a lot of, if you guys wanted to, sometime I could go over, my Bluebeam and how I got it set up and why I got it set up that way, and the tools that I use a lot, which is kind of fun. Now there's a little side comment I want to make on Bluebeam. So last year I was using the old Bluebeam. I think it was like Bluebeam 18 or something like that. And I just upgraded probably 4 or 5 months ago to Bluebeam 20, or Review 20 rather. So it totally changed everything, at least for me, as far as layout goes and icons and everything. But at first I was frustrated, but then once I took some time and and dove into and set up my toolbar at the top, and it's actually pretty slick. I find it a lot better than its predecessor. So yeah, we use Bluebeam for a lot, for change order backups. We use it for document management. Like there's a lot of documents that you don't think about, like change orders, but what are like submittals, RFIs, we talked about those. Any like sort of inspection logs. For heavy civil work, you got to do a lot of SWIP work. So that's stormwater pollution prevention. So there's a ton of documentation that has to happen with that, signatures and rosters. And anyways, Bluebeam helps a lot with that. The signature mode we use quite a bit, where you can store your signature and have it, sign and change orders. You can do it that way. So we use that quite a bit. One that I'm going to show you guys on one of these next slides is overlays. So we love to do overlays on Bluebeam. I'm sure you guys, most of you know how to do that. But I'm going to give an example of that further down here. So this is a map. I made a systems map for all our underground utilities at Table Mountain Casino. So for those of you that have been up there, this is Millerton Road that just got widened. And then this is Sky Harbor. The old casino's over here. And then this is the brand new one they built with the large tower. So I don't even know if you guys can see my cursor or not, but
Yes, we can.
okay. Excellent. So there's a bunch of different utilities that we had to install: potable water, recycled water, storm drain, sewer force main, to list, a few of them. So when you get the plans, it just shows you the line, right? The black line and what it is. It doesn't make it very clear. It doesn't help you pre-plan the operations, right? So I kind of came up with the systems map. It's a super large document. I think it's like 32 by like 200 or something, but a lot of copy and pasting, match lines and labeling. So anyways, this took a lot of time, but it was something I liked using Bluebeam, and I could measure everything. It was pretty slick. So anyways, this is just an example. I made this index over here, table of contents, just kind of showing what everything means on the map. So it's legend, so it's pretty helpful. Then I think I got a few pictures here of Table Mountain. You've seen a few already too. So this is an example of an overlay on our Merced Highway 99 job. One of the problems we had on this project was that the traffic handling plan, so where you're going to put traffic while other work's being done, did not correspond with the staging plans. So those were two separate sets of plans with separate match lines. So they didn't match up perfectly on each sheet. They were all different. So you couldn't easily overlay them as you would just a normal plan set. So that took a lot of creative cutting and pasting and making different documents, and then making sure those, have the same stationing, and then you use the overlay program and line those up. And anyways, this is kind of what you come out with. So you can see the two different stages in green and red. And this red is where we close off and work on this ramp area. But anyways, this generated quite a few RFIs from our end, just by doing these overlays. So Bluebeam was instrumental in taking care of that. So any questions about the overlay, by the way? Or I'm sure you guys know how to do that, so I'm not showing you anything. But
You got questions, Jaime? You're always good at asking questions.
yeah, no worries.
Oh, maybe he's getting ready.
I'm gonna hold off on it.
Okay.
No worries. So that kind of covers some of the areas we use Bluebeam. Again, it's our default PDF viewer and plan markup tool for pretty much everything we do. So just like most other construction companies. So I'm going to go into, Christy asked me to share a few current projects that we have at Tykert out of the Fresno office. So here's a few. I put 4 on here. Tesoro Viejo, probably a lot of you guys know about that community. It's in the Madera Ranchos up off of Highway 41. So that's a $44 million job, and we keep getting different packages added to it, different phases. So right now we're working on phase 3 because they can't build homes fast enough. The market's on fire. So we got to clear the land, put in all the utilities, and put in the roads. And that's what we're doing out there at Tesoro.
Yes, that Tesoro Viejo, is it, do you think that that's all going to fill in? They're building out towards Friant, and there's a lot of space in between. You think you guys have contracts to fill all that space in?
So not so much towards Friant, but more towards the river. So to the south at Tesoro. So if you're at Tesoro Viejo,
Uh-huh.
future development plans on going, from that kind of intersection of Avenue 15 and 41 from
Uh-huh.
corner south. So
Okay.
not right on the freeway, but tucked up in the hills there, kind of by those custom private mansions up there. But all around that whole area, they're going to be building roads and doing infrastructure. So
You mean on the bluffs?
on the bluffs, yeah.
Bluffs, okay. But you know where the little, it's like a little house out there that's a little America house. It's like a little flag
The
house.
flag barn, yeah, the
Yeah, the
flag.
flag barn.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
that side isn't gonna be developed.
It is, but not that far down. So there's the
I
work
see.
road that's going to tie in that Avenue 12 where it extends further east, right?
Uh-huh.
Goes to the golf course. So there's going to be a road that ties that road in all the way up around the hills to Tesoro Viejo.
Okay. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. So anyways, there's a lot of work to happen out there at Tesoro. They can't build homes fast enough. They're already going to fill in everything they got out there. So we're working on the third phase, but it's going to keep going, and it's pretty cool. If you haven't had a chance to check it out, we're doing all the work out there right now. So it's pretty sick. Here's another one, Table Mountain. This is one that we're pretty much finished up with, just finalizing some punch list items right now. But this is the kind of one of the big jobs in Fresno you guys have, I'm sure, heard about. This was a big job for us. We shaved down an entire mountain with rock and put in a whole new utility package and foundation for this building. So it was something pretty special. We worked for Tudor Perini Building Corporation on that one. It wasn't the Tudor Perini Engineering that's doing the high-speed rail. This is a different one, but it's still part of the same corporation. But anyways, they were the general on this, but they didn't self-perform anything. But anyways, we worked for them. Really cool project. Once it's open, you guys should go check it out. So this is the one I'm on down here now. I didn't have a glorious picture for it, but it's Highway 99 in Merced. It's 4.5 miles of all new freeway, concrete paving, asphalt paving, some underground work, grading, traffic control, K-rail. So if you guys drive 99, you're going to see it. It's going to be a little bit sketch, but that's the way they told us to build it. So we're going to build it. And it's pretty intense. So we have to do a lot of the work at night with lane closures and very high speed. And at night, you can't just go to Home Depot or call somebody if you need, a part or something. You got to have it all ahead of time planned out down to a T. So I'm in the middle of that right now, and we're actually going to start work tonight. But yeah, it's a cool project. It's a big one. We're barely getting into the next stage, the second stage right now. So
have you been having to work at night, Wesley?
On and off, yeah, on and off, bit of both. But every PE, if you're doing heavy civil, has to go through a short period where you're doing some nights. I mean, that's pretty common, but the goal is to have it pre-planned as much as possible. So you don't have to be out there for the full night and you're not just kind of like running around like a chicken with your head cut off. So, yeah, the goal is to have it all pre-planned ahead of time where you don't have to be out there much. But sometimes you do, right, just for layout or some of the things I was talking about. So, but yeah, that's our Merced job. And then the next one we just won was the Veterans Boulevard, the next phase of veterans for the city of Fresno. It's going to cross Highway 99. I don't know, most of you guys, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's Northwest Fresno. Granite just did the stage prior, the phase prior. We won this next contract, which is going to go up and over 99. Some bridge work and some large abutments, and some on and off ramps. So
I'm trying to think of where that's at, Wes. So you said, where is it? Veterans?
it's Veterans Boulevard. So it's south of Herndon in 99, but north of Ashland in 99.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Somewhere in there. But yeah, it's in that area. It's kind of by just south of the high-speed rail where they're going to be going through.
Okay.
This is part of that realignment and for the high-speed rail. So I don't know if the Granite intern's still on here, but yeah, they just did a portion of veterans that I think was the high-speed rail bridge, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
The railroad bridge, I can't remember, but
Yeah, Jose doesn't have his mic's not working for whatever reason.
Oh,
So
yeah,
maybe you'll type in what's going on, but Yeah, and he just started with Granite, I think, in the last few months, so.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but-
One of my buddies, Tyler, I think he's one of your, he's a student there at Fresno State, but he's an intern as well.
Okay.
Over there. So anyways, yeah, so and then those are kind of some of the 4 bigger projects we're working on right now out of the Fresno office. We have a lot of smaller projects too, like overlays, like just grind and pave. You know, we have some underground jobs. We've got some other smaller jobs, but these are the big ones out of Fresno. So,
Those are some pretty big jobs.
yeah, these are some fun ones. A part of most of these, the only one I'm not going to be a part of, I don't think, is veterans, but they're for Tesoro and Table, and then now for Merced. So it's fun to work on the big ones. I can speak from experience there. It's fun to work on the big ones.
So are you, you're living in Fresno working on Merced, or you have a place down there?
Correct. Yeah, I'm living in Fresno, working on Merced. Before we got the Merced job, it was just a short 15-minute drive, you know, to Tesoro or to Table Mountain, and then before that, Tesoro, it was super quick. Now I got to do a little driving, but this is the furthest north that our office goes, and then our Stockton office covers everything, you know, through up to like Modesto. So
Yeah, be careful in the winter time coming up. I remember just out of school, I was working out at the Madera prison, which is not far from where you're at. And man, the fog, sometimes it was pretty scary. So
yeah, the fog's coming in, but yeah, these are some cool projects. And again, I'd be happy to answer any questions on these at the end if you guys want. But yeah, we're looking for employees right now. I should probably mention that early on, but we're looking for interns, and we're also looking for PEs. So if you haven't already and you're interested in this, I would encourage you to apply. And I think most of you have probably Katie's contact. I know our department has Katie's contact. She's our HR recruiter, and then the new guy is Robbie, so he's another recruiter. You guys can reach out to him.
so they can just call the Fresno office and they'll know, probably.
Yeah, and Robin has all that information because
Okay.
the route to go. So just hit up Robin, and she can give you the contact for our recruiters. So, yeah, we're looking for people. We need good people. We need young people that want to learn, and you know, Tykert will give as much responsibility as you're willing to take. So it's a really cool opportunity. It doesn't keep you just tucked in away in a shelf doing just submittals and RFIs or doing just safety or just, you know, field work. It allows you to do everything and learn a lot. So which really all that does is benefit you as becoming a PM later down the road. So yeah, I think I can jump into, if you guys have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Yeah, I do have one. But it's not too related over much of like the topic, but is there any way, if it's not too much to ask for, I saw one of the slides was like the profile view, I think, of maybe a project.
Was it this or
Possibly that one? Yeah. Are there any pointers of how to read one of those that you'd be able to give us? We have a project, and it's the first time I've ever seen one, and we can't figure it out. So,
oh, really? Okay.
yeah, you can kind of break it down a little bit.
For sure.
Take some
Let me
notes
pull up
really
something
quickly.
for you, and then I'll
This is, you know, it's funny, Wes, and you can tag on Jaime's, maybe Jaime's question too. One thing I've noticed, and I graduated from the CM program at Fresno State, you know, way before Wes did, but we focused a lot on heavy civil, you know, estimating. And that's one thing that I would say that the program has gotten away from. And so I know they just hired Maria. You probably don't know Maria, Wes, but she's okay. Yeah, but the thing is Maria, I think, comes in from Colorado, and then she's, you know, from a different country. So our heavy civil is pretty specific to California type heavy civil, you know, the plans and everything. They're not really different, but it's just the whole system of kind of doing this kind of work. So we don't have a lot of that experience. And then even in the estimating classes, even Professor Crass, they don't do a lot of heavy civil estimating. And so, like Jaime's like, well, I don't know how to read this, So,
Yeah,
the
they're totally
stationing,
different plans.
yeah, the stationing and everything is totally different than building work. And so maybe after you answer this too, you can tag on kind of how the estimating is different than building construction.
For sure. I definitely will. So I'm gonna pull up my blue beam here because this is the blue beam club and I'm not gonna use plain grid. This is just kind of a standard layout sheet for Caltrans. Jaime, is this basically what you're wanting to know about, like how to read these layout sheets, or are you looking for?
Yeah, and then like how you would like when you approach one of these, like what do you look out for? The major like pointers, how you break it down.
I see. Okay, so yeah, there's going to be two parts to this. I'm actually going to have to pull up plain grid just to make it easy for myself, but let me do that, and then we can go through this first. So yeah, like Christy said, civil plans are different than structure plans, and it's pretty apparent when you look at this. But there's some stuff on here that you don't really need to worry about too much, like curve, like design data. You don't really have to dive into this stuff that much. It just talks about like curve radiuses, and that's for the engineers. But something you want to focus on is the stationing. So I don't know if anyone's ever, I don't think many people know how to read stationing at Fresno State, but basically all a station is it's a reference point on a project, and it's measured in units. Each station is 100 foot. So that's how they go by. And if you guys look at my screen here, I'm zooming in on a station. So this is a freeway. This is actually the freeway through Merced. So you can see the little dashed line here. This is if you were driving northbound on 99. And then over here on the other side of the bushes is if you were driving southbound on 99. There's a station line that runs from the beginning of the job to the end of the job. And sometimes there's multiple lines, but they go by stations. That's what they're called. And each tick here is a station. So if I wanted to reference a point on a plan sheet, let's say I wanted to reference this bush right here, I could say the bush is located at station 455, or sorry, 456 plus 00. So let me type that out. Just make it easy. I got this toolbar up here.
If you do it in the, do you see the chat?
Yeah. So if I want to see. So if you were to give a location for this state, for like this bush right here, for example, it would go something like this. It would go 450, right? Because this is 455. The next one up is a 6. So it'd be 456. That one's 457, 458. So this bush here would read as 456, and then plus however many foot up to 99 that it takes to get to this bush. So it would probably be like plus 10, right? So if you had let's say to go 10 foot past this point here, how would you reference? Just draw something here. How would you reference this spot? Right there. Well, first you'd have to calibrate your scale, as you guys probably know how to do. So it's a little bit different. There's not a scale at the bottom. You got to use the station line. So I'm going to calibrate it off the station line starting at 455. I'm going to go to 457 here. And if each station is 100 foot, well, then how long is that from 455 to 457? That's 2 stations. So, right, 450. From here, it's 456, 457. So that's 2 ticks, right? That's 2 stations.
So 200.
That'd be 200 foot. So I'm going to plug that in here. It's 200 foot. And that's what it registered on the plan sheet. So now that I'm calibrated, I can find out the distance from 457, which is right here, this tick, to this arrow. So I can go, let's just use my measure tool here. So I can do this, and I can say, so from 457 to this exact spot, well, it could be anything, right? A bush or a stake or a sign or whatever. It's 19.58 feet. So if I wanted to reference this spot right here, I would say this is 455 plus, or sorry.
456,
Seven.
seven, yeah.
Plus 19.58, right? So that's how you would reference this spot along this line. That's all you're doing. Now the plus you can pretty much ignore if you want to. That's how I first understood stationing. All that's doing is saying you're at this point and then you're adding an extra 19 foot, right, along that line to reference that spot. But it's just a way to reference, whether it be for the purposes of a takeoff or for the purposes of, you know, pre-planning or giving a specific location for something. All that stationing does is tell you where you're at on the job. It starts at one end of the job, goes to the other. If you guys were doing, to tie it into Christie's question, if you guys were doing a building, it's one building, right? It doesn't usually span over, you know, 5 miles at, you know, 200 foot wide. So the reason we have stationing for civil is because they're really, really long projects and you need to reference a specific point. So when you get like, say your pavement, you get survey stakes for that. Well, they'll come with the stations on there so you know where you're at and you can do layout based off the station and know exactly where that bush is that you have to take out or where, you know, this bridge is supposed to start, this approach side. So all it is it's a reference. And if you want to know, so here's where I could do a whole class for a semester on how to read civil plans because it takes a lot of time. But if you were doing the heavy civil Reno team, they teach you how to read civil plans. And I would highly encourage you to do that and take that class with Maria. But another aspect of that is you have typical cross sections. So, and they'll give you the stations where that condition exists. So I'm going to pull this up on PlanGrid right now. So
Before you leave there though, Wesley,
yeah,
another terminology that they use in heavy civil is right of way. Okay, so maybe you could explain to them, like looking on this, what is the right of way?
yeah. So right of way is basically the property line for the state or whatever agency owns it. You hear that term a lot at High Speed Rail if you go and intern there because their whole project is buying right away from people. So that's a big aspect and that lets them know where they can work. But for the purpose of, you know, maybe Caltrain's jobs or another agency, they have right away too, right? Because the guy who owns this, you can't be working on their property. So anyways, the right of way is this line here. This R-W is an acronym for right of way, and it tells you where the state property ends and where it begins. So if you're working with it, you have to work within the right of way. They won't let you work on someone else's property, right? So right of way is very important. You can see you got the line here and the line here. That's just basically the boundary where you can work. So yeah. Did I explain that or should I talk more about that? Or?
No, I think it just, you know, it's a kind of like a typical term that you'll hear out there. And, you know, I did some consulting work on the high speed rail, and the right of ways, every property owner owns a different right of way. And so like, for example, on the high speed rail, they were able to acquire certain right of ways, and Jared probably can appreciate this because his family has a farm out in that area. And I don't know if he was affected by this or not, but some property owners allowed the high speed rail to acquire these right of ways and some didn't. And so high speed rail said, oh, we're going to start anyway without acquiring these right of ways. And so they've been like playing what is the word? Hopscotch to try and do the work. And it's just created so much inconsistency. So, you know, that becomes a real problem. And then before you leave here, when you're starting at the starting point of a heavy civil job, it's going to be 0, 0 plus 0, 0. You know, you'll see that. And so this is fairly far along, the 457 plus, you know,
yes,
where you're at.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so it just goes linear for, you know, forever.
Yeah, exactly. It's just a line. It's like a ruler, right? That's all it is. It's a ruler that runs an entire span of the project typically. High speed rail has a very large stationing system probably because it goes forever, but each project has its start and its end typically. So that's a good point, Christy. Thanks for bringing that up. So if you wanted to know how wide your road was going to be here at this portion, you would have to reference it by station. So this would be 451 plus 50, right? But the distance between every station, I can't stress this enough, is 100 foot. Right? So it's 100 foot for each station. So from here to here, it's 100. From here to here, it's 100. From here to here, it's 100. But if you wanted to know right here, you'd have to consult the typical cross section. So I'm going to show you what one of those looks like. And these are usually at the beginning of your plans. It should be noted. So this is typical cross sections, sheet X1. And this is if you were to take a knife and slice the road perpendicular, right? You would get to see, it's just a cross section. That's all it is. It's a typical cross section you guys would see on your commercial jobs. Down here, it gives you stationing where this condition exists, right? Where this cross station exists is from SR 99 southbound line, station 60 plus 45, all through station 74 plus 1. Does that make sense? So, and then the next place that exists starts at station 80 plus 0, or 80 plus 59. And that's just different points along that line where it starts and stops, right? Where this condition starts and stops with this pavement and this shoulder, right? So go ahead, Christy.
Yeah, and so what he means by the SR 99 SB, it's State Route 99 southbound. So you've got southbound, northbound. So it'll say State Route 99 southbound or northbound. So SB or NB.
Yep, exactly. And those are different. And it should be noted that those are different lines, right? So what you saw was just one line that we did that off of, but on our project, the engineer made it interesting. So he put 3 lines. So this one is just the regular SR 99 line, right? And then this one is the southbound line, and this one is the northbound line. And then the call outs will tell you. So like there's the BC, I'd have to check what that means, but there's a whole acronym sheet. But anyways, it references it on this line at that station on that line. So SR 99 southbound, so that would be this line at station 297 plus 22. So there's 297 right there, right? See the 7 plus 22. So that's that point. But my point with this is that it's on the SR 99 southbound line. So some jobs can have multiple lines, multiple rulers all the way down the project.
So just to clarify that list underneath that section view,
Yep.
It's saying this drawing applies to these different sections or these different lengths from this point to this point.
Exactly. And then there's another sheet right next to it that does everything on the other in between, right? Those other stations. So it might have a difference in the shoulder, right? The width. It might have a difference in the thickness of your asphalt or your concrete. So we can kind of go over this if you want real briefly, but this is a typical cross section. These are the stations that this condition exists, like we just pointed out. But when you read these, it's worth noting that they give you dimensions on everything thickness wise typically. So like in this case, you have 95 hundredths, right? So that's 0.95 of a foot, so almost a foot thick of concrete pavement on top of 25 hundredths of HMA. So that's 3 inches of HMA, right? 3, 6, 9, 12. That's a quarter of a foot. So that's 3 inches of asphalt underneath this concrete. And then underneath the asphalt calls for 7/10. So 0.7 of a foot of rock, cost to aggregate base is what this is, or actually of cost to aggregate sub base. So it's a little bit different of a spec, but it's telling you, so from here to here, this is what you're going to be building, right? That's the layers of the cake, right? That you're building to make the road. The shoulder over here is different, right? So where you pull off in case you get a flat tire, your shoulder is going to have a different thickness. It doesn't need to be as thick as the road because most people, you don't drive on the shoulder, right? So that's going to have a different thickness. This one's 85 hundredths of just asphalt with no rock underneath it. So that's just kind of a brief explanation on how to read these. These mean something. So this is edge of travel way. So that your white line, right, when you're driving on a road, the solid white line on your right is this edge of travel way, right? So that's this portion right here. And then your edge of shoulder, where your paving limit right on the outside The furthest you could pull over to change your tire, right, is right here. Just to use a metaphor, is your edge of shoulder. So that's that asphalt shoulder you can pull out onto.
So your drop off on that one picture that you got, you could, a car could roll over is the ETW is so steep off the drop off to the shoulder.
Yeah, right here.
Oh, it's that's so steep.
Yeah, so this is the outside, right? So this is, let's see here. So this is the southbound direction. This is the median. It's got you guys have seen this all the time on your freeways, bushes in the middle with guardrail. So this is the median, and it's got a slope here of 6:1. So when you reference slope like this, it's different than mathematical slope. So mathematical slope is rise over run, but in this case, it's the opposite. It's you go 6 foot out to every 1 foot down. So it's a little bit different, but that's just something you got to watch out for when you're reading civil plans.
And is that because of the type of view? So like in the plan view, it would be mathematical, and then section view, it's different, or just all civil drawings?
It totally depends. I wish it was that, straightforward, but that's a good question. Usually if you see it referenced like this with a colon, right, 6:1, if it's referenced like this, usually it's the opposite way. But slope can also be referenced at a percent. I don't think this typical shows that, but you could have it saying like 2% with an arrow, and then that's a percent slope, which is, even different yet. But yeah, so and then and then very rarely do you actually see mathematical slope on there, like rise over run. But percentage slope is a derivative basically of mathematical slope, if you want to look at it that way. So your percentage is the direct comparison to actual mathematical slope, whereas this, I don't know what the technical term is, but when it's just a simple 6:1 or flatter, that's opposite. So that's 6 out for every 1 foot down. So that was something that my first year kind of had me tripped up. I was like, well, how do you, it kind of threw me through a loop, but I learned it eventually. But it gives you all these distances from this line, right? So we talked about the lines earlier, the stationing. So that middle line that let me show you, that middle line that we did this exercise, right? This is the SR99 line, right? This is SR99, and it's the middle one. So when you go back to your cross-section view, you can see, well, this is the line going the other, like cut through, right? So all the points are off this middle line, SR99, and it goes 23 foot outside of the line, transversely, technically. I know I'm getting kind of weird. It's getting kind of deep into this thing, but you could do a whole plan reading class. I would encourage you to go to the heavy civil, practice with them, or even compete with them. That would definitely help you learn how to read civil plans. And hopefully Maria does a class on how to read them. I think that would be helpful.
I think she's for now she's teaching CM20, and so I think they learn that. I think there's a couple students here tonight in CM20. So I know last semester we did a gardening industries project, and there was a ton of civil stuff in it. But this year we're doing more, this semester we're doing more of a school building. So I think they're kind of flipping it back and forth, but hopefully sometime they actually have, like an estimating class for civil. They used to, when I took it, they used to. But maybe you could, before it's about, 25 minutes till, but maybe you could explain the differences in the estimating for heavy civil versus building construction, and like, the cycle times, the equipment, like what do you have to go through?
Yeah, that's a good point. So when you're doing building construction, everything's centralized. So we touched on that a little bit already, but everything's in one site, one location. It's very tight together. You build up. With civil, it's the opposite. Everything is built out, and it's usually you don't build that high or that low unless you're doing some like underground work or something. But it's not these big structures with all this different scope and work condensed into one area. It's spread out for long periods of distance. So when you're estimating heavy civil construction, there are some similarities and differences. Some of the similarities would be you put together activities, right? You have to have a quantity takeoff, just like you would on a building. First, you would do your bottom up, right? You do your foundation first, or plumbing first, and foundation, and then you do your structure from there, and then your finish and your framing and all that. So with civil, it's very similar. It's from the bottom up, but you're building out really far. And when you're, just an example, like if you're paving asphalt on an asphalt road or concrete, you have to bring all that material into you on dozens of trucks, right? It depends on how far away you are from the location of the plant. So you have to calculate, how many trucks do I need to bring this material in this 8-hour window without having too many trucks backed up, right? Where you're wasting money, or without having your crew waiting on trucks to pave asphalt. Because both of those, you lose money in both conditions. So that's just part of the bid process. You have to figure a loop time. And I actually had the honor to teach one of the seminars in Maria's class, the heavy civil class. So we kind of talked about direct cost estimates. So I'd encourage you to go there. But one of the differences is, you have to usually do things in a tight frame of window. Like if you were doing a high rise or a commercial building or a mall or something, you can leave the work the way it is and come back to it the next day. Whereas in heavy civil, when you're dealing with traffic control, when you're dealing with cars on the freeway or on roads, you have to have contingency plans in case things go wrong, because you have to, at the end of your work shift, you have to turn it back over to traffic usually. That's one example. So everything is based on what you can get done in a day. And I mean, I know commercial is similar in that way. You have productions, you have to meet for how many lineal foot of framing you can put up, a board foot of framing, and so on and so forth. But I mean, really, it's hard to not to talk about it and not get really descriptive, but you got to figure out how to bring all your material onto the site the day of, typically. And it's hard to explain, but it's so spread out. So you have to be pretty organized. It's very methodical. And you can't always start doing something until everything's done, but there's a lot more similarities than there are differences, actually. So, but the biggest difference is that it's totally spread out, and you're working with traffic, and you're working with, tight time frame, tight windows. Like if you were doing a commercial building, you had a pour for a foundation. That's a very tight time window. So that's the best example comparison I can give you. That concrete cures. So you have to have that thing done by the end of the shift, or else you got to rip that whole thing out. And then that's just, that's a lot of money wasted. So with civil, it's similar to that. But maybe more often than not, that's the condition. Everything's way more time sensitive, each shift, each day.
Well, in another kind of like similarity and a difference, but in heavy civil construction, equipment has a bigger play than, say, building construction. Like you might have an estimate for a crane, a large tower crane, but in heavy civil construction, there's so much equipment. So maybe you could talk on the equipment a little bit.
Sure. Yeah, we play with big, the yellow iron.
Tonka trucks.
Yeah, big Tonka trucks. And those are expensive, right? And you got to have someone running every single one of those. So it's not as simple as just have like a laborer out there to, like install it or hit it with a hammer or something. Like you got to have people running the equipment. The equipment has different rates for different sizes, right? So you have a small little baby excavator, you got a big excavator. There's a sweet spot in the middle for each scope of work that you want to hit. You don't want to bring out what's a good metaphor? You don't want to bring like a semi truck to haul like maybe your boat to the lake, right? That's kind of a comparison. So you wouldn't want to do that on the freeway and bring in this massive piece of equipment that you don't need for something really tiny. But it's the opposite's true as well. You don't want to bring in something really tiny for something really big. So depending on the scope and the room that you have, room's a big one. How much space you have to work. In commercial, it's maybe not as big of a deal as far as the work goes, because most of it, you bring the materials up to your level where you're at, and then you just work inside the building. But I mean, you guys use it for layouts, right? For laying out materials and like logistics plans in your yard, but for work like this, you have very limited room, but you have really big equipment. So you have to take that into consideration in your productions, in your production rates when you're bidding. And we talk a lot about that in the heavy civil class, but you got to pick the right tool for the right job. So equipment's really important. Sometimes you got to rent it if you don't have it. Sometimes you have it and you have to use the full hours. And I mean, we could just go forever and ever into the details of equipment, but yeah, equipment plays a huge role with civil construction, way more than any other field. So yeah, we have a lot of equipment. And I have a whole PowerPoint on different equipment.
I know, I was gonna say, that's, I think, the most interesting thing about heavy civil, you know, like a sheep's foot roller is different than, say, a backhoe or a, you know, I mean, it's just like there's so much equipment and the sizes are different. You know, you go on a big dirt work job and these huge, you know, scrapers come out of there, and, you know, it's just amazing, you know,
It is. It's similar to your tools that you would use in a building. So
yeah.
all these different types of drills and impact guns and air tools and, you know, saws, and it's just like that, but way bigger with bigger equipment, and you got to use the right tool for the job. And sometimes that option, that decision isn't super easy. So you have to really calculate out your loop times, how long it takes you to move material from here to here, you know, to figure out what is the most efficient way to do it. Do you have enough room for that piece of equipment? Do you have to get it on and off the freeway every night? How many trucks does it take to do that? Right? There's all these different factors at play that equipment adds to heavy civil construction that you don't have. And another thing I should mention with civil construction and bidding, you don't use, like in a building, you'd use a lot of like framers and carpenters and masons and pipe fitters, right? And rod busters. Those are all different trades in vertical construction. But out here, you don't have as many different trades. You have operators and laborers. Those are the two big ones. And if you're doing structural concrete work, you'll have masons. And then sometimes you'll have rod busters if you're doing like concrete paving. But those three, the first three were the most common. You don't have a whole lot of, you don't have as much handwork. So that kind of goes hand in hand with the excess of equipment.
And does Tykert self-perform any of their work?
Most of it, yeah.
Most of it. And you guys have plants as well, just like Granite.
Yeah, we sell
concrete.
rock to ourselves and to Granite, and they sell rock to us. You know, it's you know, but that's, and it's kind of weird to think about when you first start thinking about it, but it is business, and you know, sometimes, you know, you get better pricing. Sometimes your competitor gets better pricing from your own plant, and those are just things you have to figure out once you get into the industry for the reasons why they do that. But yeah, we all sell to each other, and that's part of the game.
Is your home office off of French Camp?
What's that?
Is your home office at French Camp?
Home, no, it's in our corporate office is in Sacramento. It's
Okay,
Watt Avenue and American River Drive.
right.
Off the
And
50.
Granite's is in Watsonville, I think.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think Granite is in Watsonville. I mean, you guys all have, you know, I'm sure different areas. Every probably office has its own kind of setup, but
Yeah. Jaime had a question. He had his hand up. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah. What's like compared to like building construction? Do you know like the process or like the durations that people spend as a PE, you know, and then how that looks throughout their career?
For sure. So typically, I mean, you guys are all doing internships right now, and you have to do an internship before you graduate. So you start off there, and then you get hired on as a PE right out of college. At Tykert, it might be a little different than some other companies, but usually you get hired on to work under a PM on a specific job or maybe a few jobs. And then you'll do that for maybe a year or two. And then we do something called a rotation. And what that does is it gets you experience working as a PE, but also under a superintendent or also under an estimator. So you don't just see the field management, you see the superintendent side, like the operations, right? The field operations, making sure you're hiring and firing and labor guys, and you're getting them the right tools they need. You're scheduling your crews to be on specific job sites for different PMs. But as a superintendent attendant PE. And then you also could have the option to go in underestimating and work as a PE underestimating for a season and maybe put a job together and bid it, which is a big task, and you have a whole team to do that, but you get to see the bidding side and how you procure work. So there's different routes you can take, and they give you kind of those three, branches, if you will, that you can kind of choose from. But as a PE, you get to experience all three of those. I would say if you're a successful PE, you could probably get promoted to an assistant project manager in 5 years, 4 to 5 years in the, working for Tykert or working in the industry. You'll probably have the experience to run a smaller job. So that would be an assistant project manager role. And then after that, you probably do that for like a year, hopefully, or two. And then you go into a PM, project manager. And then that's a career position right there. So, but then you can keep moving up, right? You can become a senior project manager, running big work. You can go to area manager, right? It just keeps going up just like any other company. So, but that's kind of the rough time frame, right? 4 to 5 years if you're a solid PE. And there's nothing wrong if it takes more than that. Sometimes the opportunity just isn't there at that company where there's an assistant project manager position open that you can take, right? But I'd say give 5 years. If you're confident in what you're doing and you're doing a good job, you're getting good reviews and getting raises, I'd say 5 years is probably a healthy duration to be a PE before you start looking into being a project manager. So, yeah. Does anyone else have any other questions?
In Wes, from what I know about like Tykert and Granite, most people that go to work there and they like working there end up staying there most of the time. I don't know if that's still the case, but it's been that way historically, I would say.
Yeah, it is. There's a lot of smaller outfits out there, and maybe newer companies that will try to appeal with a lot of money, sometimes right out the gate, but they'll only need you for maybe a year or for 2 years. And you'll be hopscotching around chasing money that ultimately isn't worth it. And I know that's kind of weird to hear maybe for the first time, some of you, but there's other ways you get paid. It's something you'll learn in the industry. It's not just cash. So when you're looking at offers, don't see the highest offer and just boom, man, that thing's, 70 grand, 80 grand. I'm going to take that right away. Look at where the location is, look at who the company is, right? Make sure it's not like a security paving where, you have a terrible reputation. You're turning over employees like every year, right? Because the management's always trying to blame someone, right? So there's other ways you get paid. Like Tykert, for example, they give you like a fuel card for your truck, and they give you a vehicle allowance, which is like a truck payment. So you get to pick what you want to drive, and they'll give you all the gas you need for it. So that's one way. Some companies give you a company truck, which some people like more, which helps. And then there's just a bunch of paid time off, vacation. There's all these things matter, but the reason I stuck with Tykert is culture. We're big on culture. We're very, how do I say it, like family oriented. We're not too big where you are a barcode, but we're not too small where we can't pay you maybe next week. So it's a very sweet middle spot where you get all the resources of a big company, but it's small enough to where you can know everybody. And it's the oldest contractor in the state of California, license number 8. So most companies now are license number like 1,600,000, whatever. We are license number 8, and that is the oldest active contractor in the state of California. 1 through 7 are no longer in business. We've been here since 1887. So it's you don't stay in business that long and through all the highs and lows by doing something wrong. So Tykert, I trust Tykert, and I like the culture. It gives me a lot of opportunity, whatever I need, and however far I want to go. That's kind of up to me to decide. So anyways, that's why I chose Tykert. It's a great company to work for. Granted, it's very similar.
That's amazing, Wes. I didn't know that they were number 8. That's incredible.
Yeah. Long time ago.
Yeah. Well, we sure really appreciate you coming here. Honestly, this is the first really in-depth heavy civil speaker that we've had. So I don't know about the rest of you, but I learned some things, and it's really refreshing to see someone different come in here, and yet you're right in our back door, backyard.
Yeah. We're we're right here. It's we do a lot of work. You'll see us on the freeway. You'll see us around. But yeah, in construction management, like you said, Christy, the program for civils kind of declined over the past 5 years, maybe 10 years actually. But yeah, I think they hired Maria, so that's a good first step towards reinvesting in the industry. And there's a lot of jobs out here. Another reason I picked Tykert is because heavy civil rather is the work's more steady. It takes of a hit when the times are bad. So because there's always freeways you got to pave, right? People always got to drive, move, freight places. So yeah, that's another reason I chose heavy civil. But I honestly love it. You're playing with big equipment and you get a lot of responsibility, and you're not stuck on one project site every day. Just in one little cubicle on some high-rise building. Anyways, it gives you a lot of opportunity, and you're doing something different every single day. No days are repetitive. It's totally different every single day. So that's why I like it.
Well, that's great, Wes. It's so nice to see that you're being so successful and you've learned so much. I remember when you're in my classes, and you learned just a little bit, and then, now you know a lot. So it's really great.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Yeah, it was fun, and I really enjoyed Fresno State. But there's nothing that can substitute experience. So when you guys get out there, come out there humble. Don't think you know anything, and just soak up everything you can. That's my best advice.
So I have a question for you, Wes. I'm gonna put you on the spot. I hope you'll come back. Are you interested in coming back and talking with our bug user group? For sure. And I mean, if there's ever an opportunity to do it in person, this is just my preference. I'd rather do it in person. I know. You can be more personal. It's easier to ask questions and explain things. But yeah, really more than willing to come back and talk if you guys want to have me, for sure. Yeah, definitely. I might even arrange for, maybe one of my 110 class, to come in and talk. I don't know if you know this, but I'm in Cody, Wyoming. Oh, really? Yeah, no, since COVID, I've been back here, so we've kept the bug group going now for, I think it's been like 5 years, and it's really, I think these speaker series are just really great. And we started off meeting at Wahoo's and, hanging out together, and it's just blossomed into this great group. So we're always looking for speakers. So we'd love to have you come back, because you explain things very well. For sure. And yeah, if I'm definitely willing to come back, and I enjoyed being here, and I like reinvesting in, the alma mater. So yeah, hope to help out and be happy to speak, hopefully in person sometime, or maybe Wahoo's. I love Wahoo's. So yeah, we can arrange for a bug meeting over there, and I can dial in once. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Well,
I like Wahoo's too.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we used to, prior to COVID, COVID's just kind of messed everything up. Sure. We used to meet over there all the time. So yeah, I need to give me an outer reef burrito with a pitcher of beer. I'm ready to go. So yeah. Conversations. So you guys have any other questions for him or comments or anything? Because we're about to wrap up here. There's about 5 minutes left, and we can just wrap it up. So anything else?
Nah, just what's up, Wesley?
What up, dude? Yeah, I didn't know you were here, Alex. I didn't see your camera turned on. I'm a little disappointed.
You know Alejandro, huh?
Oh yeah, he's our intern.
Oh, that's great. Well, great, Alejandro. I didn't know that.
Yeah, he's interning meeting. He's going to go into the field here pretty soon and either come work for me or another PE. I'm
gonna be on veterans.
Oh, you'll be on veterans. Excellent. So you'll be working with Chris Grimm. So that'll be cool.
Yeah.
That'll be a great experience for you, Alejandro.
Oh yeah, for sure. I would just like to say I would encourage anybody interested to reach out to Robert or Katie or maybe even Alex Salcido. It's just a really good place to intern. Like I've been there since my freshman year, and I've seen other companies. Like I take peeks. A little interested, but for the most part, I really don't want to leave there. And if the opportunity stays there, I'm definitely going to take it. So it's a real good place, even for an intern.
Yeah, and
absolutely.
I would say, this is the thing, when I was getting out of school, it was so hard to find work. We're in a very fruitful time for work, but it may not always last. And I guarantee you're more likely to stay on board with a Tykert or Granite, or a solid building company in Fresno than some of these other bigger companies. They'll they'll lay you off as soon as the economy goes down. So Tykert's a great company. I've heard very good things being in the industry for many years. So we're glad to have you, Wes.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Oh, no problem. Thanks you guys for coming tonight. And the next speaker is Carrie Rentz from Queering. I don't know if you know Carrie, Wes, but he's going to be speaking on how to get a drone license and some of those kind of tech issues that you might be working with out in different companies, taking pictures, doing video, using Bluebeam to categorize all that stuff. So that's our next speaker in a couple weeks. So we can look forward to that. And you're welcome anytime, Wes, if you want to learn things that you don't know.
Yeah, I want to throw in one last thing. So if you are interested in drone work, we do that as well. So we use that to
Oh, good.
of all of our projects when we're moving dirt, so you know where you cut from and fill from. But anyways, yeah, that'll be a cool guest speaker for next week.
Yeah, Wes, my husband is a land surveyor. And so he uses drones a lot. Sometimes, this is kind of segue into the next session, but even in heavy civil, there's a lot of civil contractors back here in Wyoming, just because there's a lot of land, BLM, there's just a lot of that kind of work. And they use that a lot of times in some of these rural areas so that, they can go in and look at, like, we've got huge mountains very close, it's hard to get areas, and so they'll go up there and survey those areas, and not have to drive to them, and it's a little bit easier to find and see and, kind of the idiosyncrasies of those areas. So it's a very interesting area of work. And some people get their license. I think it's almost like a pilot's type license.
It is.
Yeah.
FAA drone license, yes.
Yeah. So there's a lot of education with it. So I think you guys will have a really interesting time in a couple weeks with Carrie asking him questions. So yeah. So thanks a lot, Wes.
Of course.
Okay. We look forward to having you back, maybe in the spring.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Anytime, guys. Anytime.
Okay, well, we'll see you, and I'll stick around here, and you can stick around too in case anybody has any questions. But you guys all have a good weekend this weekend coming up, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Yeah, thank you.